Hello, everyone. Brad Hairston here. Welcome to Transform Now. Today, we are talking supply chain transformation on the show. And joining me to do this are two experts in the space. First is Gaurav Karker from Capgemini, and then Chris White from scmBLOX. Welcome, gentlemen. Why don't you tell us more about yourselves? Gaurav, you go first.
Thank you, Brad. I'm Gaurav Karker. I'm based off of Chicago. I'm a supply chain planning and operations leader with extensive experience in enterprise-wide transformation. Currently, I am a supply chain leader in Capgemini North America, where I work with clients in different industries, manufacturing, automotive, life sciences, high tech. And really my role is to understand clients' need and help them transform their supply chain on where they stand. In my career, I work across different companies, software companies, logistics, large consulting firms. I have a broad set of experience in different facets of supply chain transformation. I am passionate about, supply chain resiliency, sustainability, and of course, now the augment of AI in the supply chain planning and operation. That's an area of interest as well as, area of research. So I'm passionate about it. And I'm looking forward to this session, talk more about supply chain, AI, and automation, which can really deliver outcomes. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you here, Gaurav. Chris, how about you?
Been doing modeling and simulation for 30 years now. That's how I got into the modeling and simulation for supply chains. Done a lot in Lean and Six Sigma, and that also drove me to doing some process modeling and most of the work in defense, but a lot elsewhere as well. I'm gonna get a little more personal than Gaurav did, and because I just had a big thing. My oldest daughter just got married this past weekend, so been married for 30 years to a girl that I've known since kindergarten. We were in the same kindergarten class, and my mom tells me I came home from kindergarten and said, I'm gonna marry Pam. And anyway, dated on and off. Anyway, got together later in life and married, and now 30 years. And we've got two daughters, and the eldest is in Brooklyn, New York, and she just got married. So we just came back this weekend. So anyway, went a little more personal on that, but we'll get into some of my work stuff later.
That's great. Nothing wrong with that. And by virtue of your accent, we can all tell that Chris is a Texan like me. So
Dallas, Texas area. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Now, how do you're from different companies, but you're both heavy into supply chain automation and AI. How did you two meet? How do you know each other?
That's a good question, Chris. I think that would be interesting. But the way I see is I've been seeing Chris's work. He's passionate about supply chain. I keep seeing him on LinkedIn and other areas. Mm-hmm. Of course, he has his own company. So I think we did connect sometime, I believe last year, and we were sharing information, good stuff, across supply chain. Because we are both passionate about this topic.
Exactly.
And then we realized this year, let's collaborate and work together. And then Brad, you came out. So I thought it was a great opportunity, and here we are.
Yeah, I tell you, LinkedIn is finally, I think, the tool that they always wanted it to be when they started it 20 years ago or something like that. Where at first everyone just kind of got on it, really just held your resume or something like that. But now, thanks to COVID, everyone has really used it. And so, reached out to him. We got connected and kept following and talking, and one thing led to another.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, Gaurav, let me start our conversation with you and like you to tell us what the intelligent supply chain practice at Capgemini is all about. And I know that you've recently worked with my company with SS&C Blue Prism to build out end-to-end solution on that platform. So perhaps you could also explain what's been going on there.
Absolutely, Brad. And the way I see that, it's a two-part question. In the first part, we talk about the intelligent supply chain at Capgemini. And then I want to take the second part and talk a little bit about the solution we have built using the SS&C Blue Prism, the Chorus platform. Basically, we have built a solution and we are rolling it out at, many different customers. I want to, take a moment to talk about that as well. Now, the way I see this, when we talk about intelligent supply chain, the word intelligent basically refers, when we talk about a system or something which is able to change state depending on the situation it's in, state or action based on the response to an external situation. And this is our goal in Capgemini, is to create supply chain system which can be resilient, which are not static but dynamic and intelligent enough to understand what's changing out there in the market, and then make solution, make recommendation based on the changes. Because the only thing we see is that change is the only constant. Basically, everything is changing as we go. Now, there are few facets to this intelligent supply chain solution. The first aspect is that we want to be very outcome focused. And what that means is, in today's world, in supply chain transformation, there are very many software vendors providing, greatest solution. There are a lot of automation solution. There are a lot of data solution. There is good word around processes, but really the value won't come unless you bring them together and then show a business outcome that yes, we are improving in terms of our service level, improving in terms of our inventory and so on. So that's the first facet of the intelligent solution, that how we integrate different aspects, people, process, technology, and data, so we can actually deliver the outcome. Now, when I talk about the outcome, there are again different aspects of the outcome. The first is resiliency, which is the key aspect for all supply chain leader across. They need the ability to do things in case an emergency happens or in case things don't go the way they planned for. The second aspect is the sustainability. A lot of focus in terms of collecting the right data, ESG, getting into net zero, controlling the scope 3 emission. That's the second aspect. The third aspect is, of course, the cost focus. That cost is a big mandate across the chief supply chain officers, VP across North America, or I should say across the globe. So how we really, layer in that productivity and minimize the cost. Cash is another focus, the working capital. It's very important that we manage working capital the right way, because if you can free up that cash, you can use it to do, great things in your supply chain. And then last but not least, the service, which is very, very important. And the reason I kept it for last is because it's so important to keep customer in the focus, that service is what we care, and then everything kind of rolls into that. So that is the intelligent supply chain, practice we have in Capgemini. Now, going into the second part of is the question, what solution we have built actually. As I mentioned earlier, that we work with, many different technology, may it be around data, around, advanced planning or automation or sustainability, you name it. We work across many different tool platforms. And what we do is we pick and choose, some, key strategic aspects, such as SS&C Blue Prism, to build a solution which we are confident that we can deliver to customer, and there is actually a value, delivered to the customer. That's, our focus is. Now, given our strategic partnership with SS&C, we have built a solution together. And the key aspect of this solution as we start is first and foremost breaking down the silos. When you talk about automation, what we see that we work cross-functional between different teams. There is a sales team, demand planning, supply planning, capacity planning, your manufacturing team. It's really a broad section of people we work with. And we see that these people, tend to work in silos, and it's not optimal. So the first, key facet was how we can break down the silo, leveraging, SS&C automation, basically the Forus platform. The second key aspect was the better integration. And, maybe I should spend some time talking about better integration, because this is really, really important. It's very important to understand what we are saying. Integration in terms of two different aspects. The first is just the integration among different tools. And what we see that all the different supply chain tools out there in the market, they are point solution, majority of them, and they have their unique data model. And each data model needs, for example, your planning versus your order management versus your MDM. How do you make sure that the data interoperability is there? Seamlessly, one system can talk to other system, And that's where automation plays a huge role to integrate this and making sure the speed is there. Because if it's taking too much data lag and it takes 3 days to tell you the inventory position, it's a loss. So the automation really, allows the speed of automation to give you the faster integration. The third aspect of the solution was the fast decision making. A key aspect among different, companies we work with is the slowness of decision making. You plan a scenario, then you run it to the approval command, you take it to your senior leadership. It takes time. It takes time to get the approval. And by the time you are taking the action, you may have already missed the boat in some cases. Your customer is already angry and pissed that they didn't get the order they were expecting. What automation does is it expedites a lot of that decision making very quickly. We can show what you did before, what, in these kind of scenarios. So that speed, becomes the key. And then last but not least, the driving the outcomes we mentioned, right? And it's the key for us to showcase those outcomes. And we saw SS&C can allow us to do that. So given these 4, key tenets, keeping in mind, we created a solution. And what that solution is, and I will go a little bit more into specific the solution now. It's basically a 3-layered solution which leverages the SS&C Chorus, agentic AI, layer basically. And what it does is the top layer is the orchestration layer. Orchestration layer allows to connect with different areas, your plan, source, make, deliver, return. Then it has a analytics layer, which does the analytics, the calculation, literally the brain basically, to understand that, hey, what kind of decision making or, recommendation we could make. And then the bottom, there is a data foundation, which is extremely important to have the right data foundation for the solution. So that integrate data across the different tools, different inputs, including data coming from third party like your supplier. So given these 3 key layers, the orchestration layer, the analytics layer, and the data layer, we have created an end-to-end automation solution in SS&C Blue Prism. And the few use cases, and I should say the top use cases what we see right now, the first one is the data standardization. So a lot of time, if you see like demand forecasting, demand planning, good amount of time you need to spend to clean the data, to make sure it's aligned to what you want. And automation can really do that. So this is the first use case we are seeing a lot of customers are interested using that solution, that the amount of data cleaning, data massaging we could do. The second key use cases we are seeing regarding the demand forecasting, the data cleaning, but also kind of, understanding the forecast value add, the reporting around it, the dashboarding, and leveraging the intelligent automation to do some of those activities. The third key use case we are seeing across customers is the inventory replenishment, which is also a key area. Inventory is big, and really leveraging AI to make the recommendation is a key. The fourth use case we are seeing is around the logistics and route optimization. Again, entire that order to cash process where we can automate, certain things in order capture, order validation, in logistics, like when you release shipment, how you get optimized shipment, and so on. And then last but not least, the procurement analytics, a lot around the supplier, how we can understand, the risk coming from supplier, some of the engagement with them. So these 5 use cases built on the solution are really, going across the customer. And we are very excited to take it to more customer and again to the next level. With that, I will complete my answer.
That's great. That really covers the gamut for sure. And I know later this month, you have an event in Atlanta to showcase this solution, this end-to-end solution to companies and give it more visibility. So that should be really, really good. Chris, let me turn it over to you and hear about your company, which I mentioned is called scmBLOX. That's SCM as in supply chain management, and then blocks, BLOX. And I know this from what I've read about it, it offers agent-based strategic planning simulation tools. Can you give us just an overview of what it is and what gaps you see it filling in the market?
Yeah, I sure can. So it is agent-based. It's kind of the original agent-based simulation. So we now use the term agentic AI, where agents have policies and rules that they operate by, and then they adjust throughout there. But you mentioned strategic. So a lot of what Gaurav talked about is very operational and tactical. So I want to introduce the idea of scope and time scale, because several of the comments that I'll make apply there. And you've kind of got, at least the military uses strategic, long-term, tactical, mid-term, operational, short-term. I think some people swap operational, but just think long-term, mid-term, and short-term. Mm-hmm. And agent-based simulation is, and the reason we're in the strategic realm of that is we're looking at the entire supply chain as a system, of which a company that Gaurav talked about end-to-end within a company and cross-functional. That company is just one agent in a larger system that might have 50, 100. I mean, some supply chains have several hundred entities in them. And so we're modeling those entities, and as they act and react, and Gaurav used the term dynamic. Mm-hmm. Nobody stays the same. So a lot of the tools that are tactical and operational tend to have limited ability to see strategically as other entities adapt and change. The only reason I can give my customer 100 orders is because my supplier gave me 100 and their supplier before them gave 100 and all that. And so we're looking more at that larger, long time frame, strategic, the supply chain is a system viewpoint, of which we're only one, entity in the system.
That's interesting. Gaurav, you talked about integrating AI into supply chain, how that's a passion for you and in the work that you do. And with AI playing a bigger role in decision-making, there's been an increased emphasis on human in the loop. In fact, I know both of you probably saw this, but Gartner recently predicted that by 2032, they think 30% of the top global economies are going to have regulations mandating that there's a minimum amount of human involvement in work processes where AI is involved. So there's a lot of concern about that. And I know human in the loop also involves human on the loop and human out of the loop. There's a lot of different loops here. Can you just take some time here to clarify the difference between those and then explain why a framework around this is so important?
Absolutely, Brad. And I think that's a great question, because a lot of senior supply chain leaders I speak with are talking that right now, that given the augment of AI, how can we, include the human in the right way at the right level to make sure not only we are doing the things accurate, but there are ethical, there are human consideration, and, the decision we make are humane, not necessarily, strictly focusing on the profits or just the business metric, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when I talk about the whole concept of human in the loop, human on the loop, and human outside the loop, the way we see this, it should be mapped with your supply chain processes, whether they are operational day to day, whether they are tactical, which are more in between, not necessarily day to day, and then the third level where they are going strategic, right? And that I put those three levels in line with the three different, human in the loop, human outside the loop, and human on the loop, basically. So let's start with the human outside the loop. Where we see human outside the loop is basically the operational activities which, come across on a day-to-day basis. For example, like your machine, failed on a given day and you are on a plant, right? You don't necessarily need a human to tell that, hey, there is an alternate machine which is free and you can leverage it for the production which you could not. This is something that the AI should be intelligent enough to take all these operational decisions, like a failure in a machine or something breaks down and so on, right? Or maybe like a quality failure. If your life sciences can detect that at which cycle the quality is failing and how many more cycles you need to complete the production process. So that's the first level, which is tactical, where we say operational, and which you say human is outside the loop. Then we go, on the intermediate, the tactical level. And these are the processes where we then, typically call, human on the loop. And why we mean human on the loop is, these are like a mid-level. So for example, a given supplier on a given month, they could not meet the requirement. And then you may need to go outside. Now, of course, the magnitude here is big enough that we just don't want AI to make the decision. So AI can recommend a part, but we need human to kind of come in, triage the solution which AI recommending, say that, hey, going to alternate supplier, how many supplier, does it making sense or not? So that becomes human on the loop. And then you go into the third level, which is strategic in nature. And that's where you really need human in the loop, because now you're talking about long range planning. Now you're talking about growth scenarios. You're talking, what if my 10% growth goes out? Where I can find capacity? Where can I have a new production location? Of course, AI can also help big time, but just given the strategic nature of these decisions, including some of this could become your, competitive differentiator. That's where we want the humans strictly inside the loop. Now, one thing before I close on this is these three loops. You're tactical with human, operational human outside the loop, tactical human on the loop, and then strategic human, in actually the loop. What we need is the learning, and the learning has to go. So for example, even at operational level, if your human is outside the loop and AI is recommending a failure of a machine or, an alternate, quality plan for your production, we need to sum these learning and send it to next level. For example, human outside to human on and human on to human in. So we can continue to learn and update how decisions are made. That's the view I see, Brad. I'll pause now.
That's very helpful. Thank you for that. Chris, let me ask you about digital twin technology. You can't talk supply chain without digital twins coming up. There was a recent McKinsey survey that suggested that 75% of companies are using some form of digital twin technology, at least of medium complexity. Is that what you're seeing? Are these real? And what's your point of view on the importance of this kind of capability?
Extremely important. I'm in the modeling and simulation world, so I'm digital twin all the way. And so I'm a bit biased, I'll admit. But even, you mentioned McKinsey having a report 75%. They had a previous report that 76% of companies still use spreadsheets for long-term planning. Theoretically, a spreadsheet can be a digital twin, and it's doing it to represent. So digital twin is any way you're trying to represent, on a computer electronically in some other way, the real world. In those digital twins, the key with digital twins is to understand there is not one digital twin to rule them all. Gaurav mentioned operational, tactical, strategic. I mentioned that, different timescales, different scopes. So digital twins that are more operational tend to be connected to real-time data sources, and they're trying to make decisions that are immediate, and they're trying to truly represent, as he was talking about, the manufacturing environment, for instance, and this machine's down, this other one's up, move over to here, reroute. So those tend to be very, very connected and data intensive. You get further away, and that spreadsheet's an example, but a lot of the modeling that we does not require a lot of data. And in fact, we sit sort of outside as a separate analysis than being tied in with all the data. And so, depending on the time frame that you're working on, that connection to the data can differ from a real-time connection to a completely disconnected is fine. I also want to introduce, we say end-to-end a lot. And there's two versions of end-to-end, and this comes in with digital twins as well.
Yeah.
There's the version that Gaurav talked about where it's more cross-functional. He used the term cross-functional, and it's sort of intra-company, within a company. And I like to use the term side-to-side more for that. Side-to-side, kind of like a two-dimensional plane, and I've got parts of my company and we're all interactive. There's a 3D version, which is top to bottom. So it's end to end, but it's top to bottom. And that's like getting into tiers 2, 3, 4, 5, raw material, whatever tier in, and doing that kind of digital twin and that kind of modeling and scenario planning at that level. And that's different. So when we say end to end, even that phrase itself can differ based on the kind of problem you're trying to address and the scope and the time scale of it and its connectedness. And so, like I said, I tend to use the word side to side to refer to those like from my supplier to me, to my customer, check my vendor, my invoices and stuff, to I really want to understand what's happening, and I want to stress test top to bottom and see what happens. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would like to add what Chris said, because, the way Chris is saying the nth tier mapping, it's just not there yet. Lot of companies at a high level not doing that. And, again, you're short on the time, but when I actually saw the visual of what Chris was presenting, like how the different tier map into each other, and you can model the risk at each tier to understand what is the impact. I thought that was something very cool. And I like the approach, Chris.
Well, thank you. Thanks for your support. And let me just add on, because a lot of people will probably hear that and go, well, how do you have any of that data? Again, it's not data that we need structure. So if you have a bill of material, if you know what you're building, I guarantee 90% of your supply chain looks like that bill of material. You got this thing made up of these three things. You probably have a supplier for this thing and 3 suppliers for those 3 things. So you start right there, and it's amazing how far you can get. And then, of course, you happen to have some real intelligence, like, well, that company does both of those or whatever. You add that as you can, but it is not necessary to get started. So Gaurav saw some of that work.
Yeah, definitely. Gaurav, Chris earlier was talking about his company, that the AI agents that they have to help with strategic planning, simulation. I'd like to get your point of view on just where you see the biggest need for other types of AI agents in the supply chain that maybe over time will get more and more autonomous, even if right now they're primarily task-based agents. So where do you see the biggest opportunities right now?
So when we think about big opportunity, Brad, in terms of intelligent automation in supply chain, what I'm seeing that we are almost on a tipping point in a change the way we have been approaching automation so far. And the reason for that is so far, and we do automation left and right, from RPA to AI, you name it. But so far, the approach always has been the bottoms up, that there is system, there is processes, and then you say, oh, okay, this is repetitive. Maybe I can put automation here. Oh, so that's traditionally, that's how we thought about automation, is go look into an existing process or, a system or function, and then say that, hey, what is repetitive and where we can automate. The reason I'm saying we are at a tipping point is that is changing. Now I'm not saying that, hey, we have a process and go bottoms up and what we can automate. In order to have agents coming in, you need to have a native AI architecture, and the approach should be top down, not necessarily a bottoms up. And another reason for this is when we think about agent, we are talking about new ways of working, and the interaction is different. So for example, the system and software we use, we don't care about user interface that much if there is already an agent who is doing the calculation. And so you reduce the number of the whole way you are approaching a process is changing, because there is not one person now clicking the 3 screen or button. It's an agent which is trying to come up with a recommendation or result, and they don't care about the user interface per se. So this is just an example. But where I'm heading with this, these 2 examples is that it's the way we are approaching automation is changing altogether. The future I see, as you asked, Brad, what are the kind of agents that we are moving to new ways of working. And the new ways of working is really, this multi-agent collaboration inside your company and outside of your company is where I see the 2 meet. Now, type of agent will differ, maybe your inventory agent or your, demand planning agent who's focusing on demand. But those functions will also slowly change. For example, you may have a network planner who's looking into and not necessarily demand or supply, right? So, my bet is that starting with those functional agents where we are, in 2025 for specific domain like inventory, demand, supply, capacity, the roles will evolve and it will change in a way that agents are taking much broader, not necessarily focusing on one aspect, as well as they are collaborating. So like a true multi-agent orchestration where, the agents can not only, identify risk, but quickly give you recommendation by collaborating with each other.
Let me ask one more question of you gentlemen, and I'd like each of you to kind of weigh in on this, but I'd like to just look forward and get your point of view on what advancements you anticipate in supply chain automation. Where are things headed in the coming years, and how organizations should be prepared for those changes? Chris, let me give you the dibs here to start on that, if you would.
All right, sure. I definitely see the need for at least accepting the reality that we need more tools in our toolbox. I kind of laid out, I'm big on the right tool for the job. And trying to force fit, the hammer to do what a screwdriver does, all those analogies or whatever, you get into trouble. So I see this mix and this combination. So even just in the example that Gaurav just mentioned of, hey, an agent could do this at the strategic level and make some decision. Well, there needs to be a model behind that drives that agent. And in that case, at the strategic level, data isn't enough, because if we're trying to explore a situation we've never seen before, I've got no data that defends why I ought to do what I do. And so an agent in those kinds of situations could, repeat history, right? And so I see this combination of a lot of different tools and using the right one for the job. And with the interconnectivity that Gaurav mentioned, it allows for that to happen more often, whereas it's not go do this analysis, go do this analysis. Now it's do this analysis, but this is embedded. It's invisible to me, that's fine, but I know the right tool for the job is being used for what's being done. So I think a recognition that more, don't pick your tool of choice and say this answers everything, because you will go woefully astray with that method.
All right. Gaurav, how about you?
Yeah. No, I think Chris made a great point. I agree with that, and I will start with that there are so many tools out there in supply chain space right now, planning tools, sourcing tools for distribution, TMS, WMS, so on. And what we are seeing is that each company is coming up with an agent. So, each software has an agent now. So there are so many agents. And where we see the gap or the need is where is that horizontal layer, which is integrating with the point solution, all the agents coming in. And, this is where, the likes of, let's say, SS&C or a automation company would be more important, because you are connecting the different tools and automation and agents around it, not necessarily, just doing one function in isolation in itself. So I think that's a key thing to understand, what is your horizontal layer when you think about the AI advancement, because every technology nowadays will come with agent. And you need to know that top-down architecture to continue to add different, tools in your tool set. That's the first point I will make. The second thing, when it comes to advancement, I see, of course, there is a rush to get AI. Everyone wants AI. Everyone wants it yesterday, putting a lot of money and so on, your companies budgeting a lot of money. But where I see the need is first clear your house before you jump into AI. And what I mean by that is understand your maturity, process maturity, data maturity. Spend some time cleaning that data, getting the house together, because any kind of POC you do will not succeed if you don't have the data clear, if you don't have processes defined. AI cannot just do same garbage work which you are doing unless you clean your house. So I think that's kind of the key thing to think of. The third thing I would say is a lot of people are, just doing AI for the sake of doing it. For example, Hammer looking for a name. Yes, we need to integrate AI, but there are so many tools which can do the job. For example, your advanced planning tool, they can do a lot of stuff. Your automation tool, they can also do a lot of stuff.
I agree with Gaurav, and to just build on that, this idea, I like his term horizontal, and there's got to be this way. There is this recognition. There are more tools out there. And just tools and technology, there are different ways to do it, and they are appropriate for different parts of this entire landscape or domain that we live in called supply chain. Some are short-term and tight in real time, and some are further off and longer term and bigger picture and looks at the whole system. All sorts of versions, and you need all of those, and they need to be able to talk to each other and share data. Even with our structural models, if you have data, great, it just makes the model better. It's just not a requirement for the base of the model. And so the more data you have, fantastic. If we can pull some of that, fantastic. And so I really liked what Gaurav was saying about that being one of the gaps, or that's a kind of a growing edge or growing area for companies.
Well, Gaurav and Chris, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a privilege having you on. We don't talk about supply chain transformation as much as we should on this show. So it's been really, really nice having both of you on. You are genuine experts in this space. I've learned a lot just listening to you respond to my questions. So thank you for being here, and I wish you both the very best.
Thank you so much, Brad. We wanted to have something so where we can share our passion, in above and beyond our day-to-day professional lives, just to reach out to people, talk to them, share. And we started this journey, and Brad, thank you for giving us the platform that we can connect and share our thoughts.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Brad.